Hello, my name is Julia, and welcome to That Ain't Right, where we discuss serial killers and other deadly criminals that I find on the internet. Today, we will be discussing Otis Elwood Toole, also known as the Jacksonville Cannibal. Toole is a rapist, cannibal, serial arsonist, and of course, a serial killer. Before I get started, I would just like to mention how much effort I just put into that intro. That took me way too long to actually record and edit. Don't know what my problem is, but let's just jump right on in. Otis was born and raised in Jacksonville, Florida. He was born in 1947 and did not in any way have an easy life. He claimed his mother dressed him in girls' clothing as a child, and he also faced incest at the hands of multiple relatives. To me, and I don't know why this stands out so much, but what freaks me out the most about his childhood is that his grandmother was a Satanist. And it's not the fact that she was a Satanist that freaks me out, it's that she exposed him to self-mutilation and violent practices as a child. And I also want to mention that Satanism isn't always just violence and gore. There are multiple branches, or sects, of Satanism which have different rituals and practices. And maybe I'll dedicate an entire episode to Satanism. I feel like that'd be really interesting to discuss and learn more about, so we'll see. Anyway, it is believed, but not proven, that he suffered from multiple learning disabilities, such as ADHD and dyslexia. It is confirmed, though, that he did suffer from epilepsy. And although we don't have much proof, Otis made many serious claims about his childhood. For one, he claimed to be raped by his father's friend when he was just 5 years old. And I really hope this claim isn't accurate, because that could severely alter his state of mind as a child. So after he dropped out of school in the 9th grade, he claimed that he became a male prostitute. And again, although not confirmed, he also claimed to have committed his first murder at the age of 14 by running over a salesman. Now I know it's a bit early in the podcast, but I would like to make a few comments and pose some questions for y'all. Was this man a sociopath? Or was he deeply affected as a child and have severe trauma? I mean, he was a serial killer, serial arsonist, and a cannibal, which we will get more into. So I think it's fair to question if he was a psychopath or sociopath, but at the same time, severe trauma during childhood can greatly affect a person's psyche, and it can cause chemical imbalances in the brain. So, could he have been born destined to become a serial killer, or was he just experiencing so much trauma as a child that he wasn't given a fair chance? I don't know. I feel like this is a case of nature versus nurture, which greatly fascinates me, and I know that I will not shut up if I start discussing it and questioning his life, because this podcast would be 4 hours long if I went in detail and questioned every little motive, every little action. Because I feel like you can go both ways, and it's studied, it's about 50-50, but still interesting to think about. Now let's get into his actual crimes as an adult. In 1976, Otis met infamous serial killer Henry Lee Lucas at a soup kitchen, and they developed a sexual relationship. Quick side note, Henry killed his mother and claimed to have killed, quote, about 100 more women, unquote, but then retracted it, claiming he made the statement to gain leverage in prison, which is smart, I guess. I mean, I feel like if you're already getting life in prison, at least try to act tough, you know? Although Henry retracted his claim, Otis claimed to have assisted him in 108 murders. In April 1983, Otis was arrested for arson and confessed to the murder of 6-year-old Adam Walsh. However, there was not enough evidence to connect him to the murder, so he was not convicted. Plot twist though, in 2008, the case was closed with Otis as the killer. In 1984, Otis was arrested and found guilty for murdering George Sonnenberg just 2 years before. Now, warning, we're about to get somewhat graphic for the rest of this podcast. He killed George by locking him in his own home and set it on fire, and Otis was then found guilty for the murder of Ada Johnson, receiving his second life sentence. At the trial for Ada, it was shown that Otis experienced paranoid schizophrenia. And by the way, does this case remind y'all of anyone? Abusive childhood, raped, cannibal, paranoid schizophrenic, murderer? I feel like he has many similarities with Jeffrey Dahmer. Quick fun fact, just throwing this in there, One of his cells was actually adjacent to Ted Bundy at one point. Small world. In 1984, Ottis confessed to 2 more murders, being David Shallert, who he shot in the head, and Ada Johnson, who was killed in the same manner. Now, there is an interview between Ottis Toole and Billy Bob Barton, and it is incredibly graphic, so much so that this podcast would likely be taken down, so I'm not going to include many transcripts of it, but I will make a few comments. That interview is actually where he confessed his desire of cannibalism, stating, quote, "I've eaten my share," unquote, after being asked if he ate young boys. He also made a comment towards Barton saying, quote, "You look damn tasty," unquote. Now, I just wanted to include those because I did mention that Ottis was a cannibal and it was not proven in any of his killings, so I thought it might have been a little important to include a little bit about that interview, but I would not recommend looking into it because it is way darker than that. That is on the lighter side of that interview. It is very intense, so if you want to look it up, just a heads up. I was scarred. Anyway, Ottis, with a number of life sentences, died in prison on September 15th, 1996 at the age of 49. So that is the case of Ottis Elwood Toole, serial arsonist, cannibal, and serial killer. And it honestly made me quite uncomfortable. I don't know about you. So I just want to make one last note. Be sure to check out Tyler Mark's music on Instagram, and it will also be located in the description of this podcast. For creating my amazing intro, I applaud him. Thank you. It is amazing. And be sure to follow me on Facebook, That Ain't Right Podcast, and I'm on Spotify, Buzzsprout, iHeartRadio. I'm trying to get on everything, so be sure to keep up. My next podcast will actually be on Henry Lee Lucas, who we discussed in this podcast. So anyway, thanks for listening. I appreciate you, and just be ready for the next one.